safe and sound.
Yo, what's good? Welcome to another video. In this video today, I'm going to show you some house music production tips that are going to be game changers for your production. So follow along and let's get going. So I made this track today, and this is the track I'm going to use to show you a lot of these tips. So I'm going to be going through the elements that I have in this track, and I'm just going to be sharing a lot of tips that are going to really help you. And as you can tell, I'm using Ableton Live, but what I'm going to be sharing are techniques that you can use no matter what software you use. I personally use Ableton Live, FL Studio, and Logic Pro. That if you check on my channel, those are the kind of softwares I'm known for, but I always carry the knowledge that I have throughout any softwares that I'll be using. The first thing is the groove, right? So when it comes to groove, you want to make sure your groove is complementary and no instrument is going against the groove that you have set up. So if I play my drums here, if I just solo them alone, they sound like this. So I basically used all Ableton Live stock sounds to create all these drums. I didn't use any external sounds from even my own sample packs here. Just to illustrate how if you use the right sounds and you get the right groove, you can definitely come up with some really good drums. So what I want you to pay attention is the main groove that I have in this track. So if I come here to where you can see the snare, so I want us to focus on the snare. So I just want to come here to my drum rack and just solo the snare alone so we can hear the drum groove of the snare. So this is the snare right here. So this is the groove here. So now I want you to notice that every other sound, especially on this section here, is following the groove here. So you can see a lot of these sounds are on the same spot as the snare here. But if I zoom in, you can see there's one sound that's just slightly off, which is this cowbell here, which I just wanted to throw off the grid a little bit so that it can sound different and stand out. But if you look at the second section here, you can also see that the sounds are following that same, emphasizing that impact, emphasizing that groove without deviating too much. And then if you look also here and also here, and you know, as we go on, you'll see the same pattern there. And then I have a few sounds like this clap on its own doing its own thing right here, just to accentuate the groove a little bit. And then you have the kick also on its place here, and then you have these extra hi-hats that are also here just to add a little bit of variation to them. So let me just unsolo these sounds so that we can hear them. Okay, there we go. So when I started to build up these drums, I had different patterns. So you can see this one here. Let me solo it again. I just have a few sounds here. I have like 4 sounds. So I have my tom up there, and then I have this cowbell, and then I have this conga chop right here, and then just the kick. So when you're starting up with your drums, you don't want all your drums to start playing all at once. You have to build to the groove that you want to get to. And then after this section here with just these few drums, then I move on to more drums like this. So now I introduced more percussive sounds here, like the hats and also this wood block here that's also adding to the groove as well. So if I remove the wood block, it sounds like this. So you have a lot of emptiness in the middle of these drum hats, in these drum hits that I said are basically following the same rhythm that the snare is going. So adding a little bit of sounds like this clap wood block sound here that just add a little bit of interest in between those empty pockets is a really good thing to do. But you don't want to overdo it because you'll end up just making a lot of noise in between. So now from this emptiness to that. So the groove is basically progressing, and then after this I went to from this, and then I started to add the snare. So from that to this. So you do really feel the impact of the new sound when I introduce it, because you didn't have it this whole time, and then when it comes in like the snare, then it's really good. And when it comes to this snare that I added here to really fill up the groove, I turned it down a little bit because I didn't like the way it was sounding in the mix with all the other sounds if I turned it up too high. So let me just bring up the volume a little bit higher. It's too much. So these are some of the sounds. You also want to watch exactly how they work with other sounds as well. So that's what I did with the drums here. And then the next tip that I'm going to give you is to use arpeggio sounds. So in this track here, I have this one sound here. So I'm just going to add it to the vibe. Hear how this sound sounds like. I like how that sounds. So then I just play just one single note of this sound here. You can see it's just one note, but because it's an arpeggio, it's doing so much to the track. So if I play it with the drums, it sounds like this. So sometimes I like to use just one note drone sounds, but sometimes I found out that I have much more creativity by using arpeggio sounds, because arpeggios is not just one note just holding the whole time. That becomes very monotonous, but you can play around with these arpeggio sounds. And when it comes to sounds like these as well, you can play around with the automation. As you can see here, I just have a slight automation right here that's rising up here, which is just a filter that I was automating so that the sound in the intro here just starts off a little bit different and then it goes up. And we're gonna keep going back to automation as well as we go through the video. The next thing is I moved onto a short bass that you can see here, which is this dub wah bass. It's a very simple bass that I added here, so it's just playing these simple notes here. So this bass for me, it's more accentuating the rhythm again, and it's almost acting like as if it's part of the drum group that I showed you in the beginning. By the way, it's just playing its really short notes. It's not holding too much. It's just doing that. And then after that, I also layered with another sound, which is a log drum sound here. So I used a log drum that I found here in Ableton. So that's what basically it's doing. It's playing these high notes here. And then it's also playing some low notes as well around this section here, where you can see it's playing just that. So I wanted to let it have a little bit of a phrase where it hits the low notes, just to add a little bit of flair to the track just before it goes to the next cycle, to the next bar, so that it's not just holding the same high notes the whole time. Because the log drum sound is really popular for its low sound, so I just wanted to throw that in there without making the track too reliant on the log drum bass. So it's something that I wanted to do, to just add a little bit of a popular sound and just, you know, make it relatable by use of this popular sound, to make it a little bit more relevant to the current sounds that, you know, producers are working with right now. So what I did as well when it comes to automation was very simple here. You can see with the dub bass that I spoke about earlier, I just automated a little bit here by automating the low pass frequency right there, and that's what I just did, so that it moves in these places here. So if I solo it alone, you can see the filter opening up, and then it closes up, and then over here it does the same thing, and then it opens up even more, just like that. And then that's it. But the log drum I didn't automate because it sounds fine as it is. So that's something you also want to look at. You have to always, it's a rule for me to always automate my basses so that my basses move. That's the difference between using a synth bass and a guitar bass. With a guitar bass, you really cannot do so much. But with a synth bass, you can play around with the filters, and you can play around with like even the attack, decay, and sustain, just to play around with it, to give it a little bit of flair and a little bit of style. Okay, so I showed you two of my bass sounds, which are just minor basses here. But I'm going to move on to my main melodic bass, which is something that I like to do. So I like to have multiple basses in my track in different stages of bass, because this music has to really have a lot of interesting bass sounds that interchange as the track is going. So now my main bass is this one called the static bass here. So if I play it on its own, it sounds like this. So that's the bass here, right? So what I did, I also automated the filter cutoff right here so that it can play around a little bit. So with a bass like this, you can start it off low like this. If you just want like for it to start being a sub, and then it builds up and it becomes more present to really lift up the energy of the track up until it goes to this part here. So now just listen to it when it's right here in context of the full track. So right here is very low key, but if I play it from here, you can really feel it. So it's really emphasizing the energy, that the energy is building up right there. Because if I just left it as it wasn't going to build up. So automating your basses like this, especially with the filter, it helps open it up and increase the energy that you want to build up. Because sometimes you can use effect sounds to build up energy, but automating the filters here is really helpful for you to really build up energy with these sounds. And another tip that I also share with you right now is that with this bass, I duplicated it. You can see there's this bass here, and then you see another copy of the bass notes down here, but it's actually not a bass sound here, which is this warm, bubbly pad. So this sound here backs up the bass, and because the bass is very melodic, it's creating some harmony with this pad sound to really emphasize the atmosphere of, you know, the kind of melodic tune that I'm playing here with the bass, because the bass alone is just holding down the bass and then it's moving up and getting a little bit aggressive on the parts that I spoke about automation. But the warm sound of this pad just gives it a really nice texture and just adds more dimension to the melodic elements that I've added with this bass here, because on its own, yes, it's melodic, it sounds really good, but when you layer it like this, it sounds even much better. So you want to find a sound that you can layer your bass with that plays the same notes, just like what I did with this sound here. And then the next thing is the vocals. So the vocals are very interesting for me. They really made this track, because without the vocals, it just sounds like an instrumental, like any regular instrumental that you listen to. It just sounds like this. But if you put the vocal in, the song sounds like it has direction now, it has a point, it has a message, it adds more feeling. So adding vocals is really something you want to do, and there are multiple ways you can add vocals and multiple tricks you can do with vocals. I'll cover in a future video. So what I did with the vocal is the first thing is I just made sure they loop where I wanted them to loop, and then I have a section right here where I changed them a little bit, right? So that's basically what the vocals are doing. And then over here they stop, and then they stop, and then I just chopped out this section here where it just like that, and then comes back again, and then it stops, and then it goes back again, just to break the vocals being a loop, because it's very repetitive. So if you want to even edit more, you can keep on editing even around the section at the beginning here to create some nice variations, but keeping the same vocal as is. So then I also added some effects to the vocal here that also added some really nice flair and variation to the vocal without even like chopping much. So I added this effect called the band pass spinner. So this is just doing like an auto filter thing. So you can see how it's moving like this, and it's making the vocal pan, it's playing around with it. I really like the effect that it added there. So what I did to this effect is I applied it in the beginning of the track as the track is starting. So that when it's starting out, it starts off with a lot of effects, just, you know, playing around, and then it just changes, and then I automated the dry and wet knob, and then it's gonna start off really wet, like with a lot of this effect on, and then it's gonna turn it off gradually, and then it goes all the way off so that it moves, and then it's gonna go off here to indicate that this is the main part where everything gets serious. There's no more effects, and then it comes back again over here, and then over here by that but those two chops that I showed you earlier, you can see it comes back in again and then it filters out. So this is also adding a form of variation to the vocals in this part here, and then it just sounds really good. So let me play it with the beat from this section here. So now you're at that break where the vocal dips and you don't know when it's gonna come back again, and then it repeats here with the effects on it, and then it comes fully back. Because at this part here I took off a lot of all the other instruments, so now the vocal can shine with a little bit of the static bass, which is the pad right here that is playing here. So it just acts, you know, in different ways depending with the part where I placed it. So you want to play around with it like that instead of just putting in the vocal as is and then you leave it like that. And then the last thing is obviously effects. So with a lot of effects that you can see on this last track here, with effects I like to try and not to reuse effects throughout the track so much, because you want to break that repetitiveness and that monotony of just repeating the same sounds over and over again. So I like to throw in different sounds as much as I can. So I have a cymbal over here, and I also have this polar one, which is an atmospheric sound, and I did just fade it out a little bit because it was a little bit too long for my liking, so I just had to fade it out so that I can shorten it. So it's something that you want to do as well with these effects, is edit them out, because some of them are too long. You just want to trim them down a little bit. So that's what I did here. I trimmed it down, and then I also have an impact, another atmosphere here. I repeated that same impact there again because I liked it. I didn't mind it repeating just a second time. And then just that ambient sound as well, and another impact here. So I know I'm repeating that same impact, but I like it, and I feel like anytime if I just want to remove it, I can always just remove it. So what I like is a lot of these ambient atmospheric sounds. They really add some really nice vibe to the track. So this first one here sounds like this in the track. It sounds really good. It's just really atmospheric in the background that sometimes you might not even notice that it's there, but it's there. Without it, there's nothing happening. With it, that sounds so good. And then this next one here, the in-harm mix. It's basically a noise sound. So without it, it feels very empty. But with it, it fills it up, and kind of creating a build up into the impact that follows after it. And then this keys ambient sound here. Just like that, because if I play that part again without, it's just empty. But with just that accenting of that ambient sound, it really makes it sound really special and really unique. So there you have it. I hope you found all these tips very helpful so that you put them into practice and improve your workflow. Remember, if you're new here, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. I'm X and I'm out. Peace.